Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile video, and in this one we're going to talk about crafting. Again, I'm going to teach you how to craft a little bit more of advanced crafting in this case. We're going to not talk about the super in-depth of every step, but I will show you how to craft the high-end chest piece for the Dark Pact character. The chest I'm wearing right now is a Vol Regalia, Hunter Crusader influence with additional curse, as well as an elevated power charge on crit and an elevated spell-based critical strike chance. We have crafted another version on stream just before I started this recording, which we showed you on stream how to do this. In this video, I'm not going to go too much in depth with how to elevate it, because that can be very, very expensive. I failed the 50-50 over dominance 6 times in a row, so that was very expensive. Instead, I will just say that the Woke Orb craft to do the elevated version is to obviously elevate them before the Woke Orb. And this will be covered in the written guide that I'll be linking down the descriptions in the guide hub later on. So how do you then craft this when it comes to the situation of not elevating it? Well, you obviously have to check the different prices of things. So the first step that you would do is to look at what kind of base would you like for this item. In our case, in the Dark Pact, we're looking at a hybrid approach with HP and energy shield. So the best base item for us would be a Vol Regalia, because that is the highest base energy shield on the chest pieces. So by looking at a Vol Regalia and buying one with 6 links and a Hunter's influence, and the reason for this I'll tackle later, this would cost us a grand total of right, we need to have a proper item level as well, sorry. So when you decide on the item level, you have to look at the mods you want. In our case, we want to have the spell crit, we want to have the curse, and we want to have the power charge on crit, and we also want to have as much energy shield as possible. 86 or higher is the highest you can get, and I can already say that in the base item, the flat HP requires 86. So already now I'll know that we're going to look for an item level 86 or higher chest. As you can see, these items are going for 4 divines or higher, not really worth doing. And the way you can then minimize or reduce the cost of this would be to script the entire idea of the Hunter influence. And now I can see that I can buy these. I'll look for non-corrupted, and see I can buy these for 1 divine. Knowing this, I'll have to add the cost of giving it the Hunter influence by looking at the cost of a Hunter's Exalted, which should be just about 1 divine as well. So by doing this route, the base item would cost me 2.1 divines rather than 4+. So that would be the initial step. Besides this, we need to buy an Awakener's Orb, so you'll have to check the prices for those. And at the time of the recording, that price would be about half a divine. On top of this, we would also need to have a scrap base. That is basically the chest piece that we're going to be destroying and moving the orbs modifiers over to the Vol Regalia. In this case, I will then search for a body armor, of course, and I want to have a Crusader influence. And in our case, we want the power charge on crit, which then will be that one. And by searching for this, I'll be able to verify that these just cost a couple of chaos. Quick note, if you want to elevate this, you would have to look at the chest pieces and hover over the mods here. And I can see that this one has a flat % mana, Crusader modifier. Also has the modifier that I want of tier 1 and no other influence mods. So I could buy this and over dominancing it if you want to do the elevated approach. Once you have the base scrap base, which would be this as an example, it's very important to point out that the Awakener Orb works in a way where it will take the influence on the first item you use it on and destroy that, and also take one of its existing influence modifiers and move that into the other item you place it on, which will also keep one of its existing influence modifiers. So to guarantee 2 different modifiers on an item, it's very important that each item only has the exact influence modifier that you want. So we were going to make sure that the scrap base had the power charge on crit and nothing else that is influence modifiers. And the base we created would be the item that is now a Vol Regalia Hunter influence, and we will use Harvest Craft for this. And this is the base item in Craft of Exile we'll be using for this, of course, with a Hunter influence. We'll be using this through Harvest, and the reason for Harvest is very simple. The mod we want is Spell Critical Strike Chance. This has a tag of Caster and Crit. This means that Reforged Caster, which cost me 75 blue juice, and the Reforged Crit would cost me twice that much. This means that it's cheaper to do the caster, and then we'll have to look at what happens with these 2 crafts. So the caster craft would allow me to guarantee a caster mod, which would be the spell crit, or in this case, the actual curse also has a caster tag. So every time I use Harvest Reforged Caster, I will either get the crit, which will be tier 1 or tier 2, or I'll get a caster additional curse. Thanks so much, and Neelix for the prime sub. Appreciate it. If I did the more expensive route, which would be the crit, the only two critical strike modifiers on a hunter influence would be the spell crit or the attack crit. You can do that as well, but as we know, it would be cheaper to do the caster. So basically, you just reforge caster. And if you're looking to elevate this to make it a bigger one, you will do this till you hit a tier 1 spell crit and getting an additional influence modifier and then over dominancing it to create the base. Once that base is prepared, we can also try to play around with this a little bit, and I'm going to use the emulator for this by using a create an item. And what will happen is you would have the body armor, intelligence, vol regalia, and it would have then Crusader and Hunter influence. And what is then happening with this approach is very straightforward. This item will have, with the Woke Orb, guaranteed the spell critical strike, suffixes in this case. So we will have this, and in our case, we did the elevated version. So it will look like this, and it will also have the power charge on crit, which we did elevated. So it will look like this. However, when you do the Woke Orb, all of the other modifiers will also reroll. In more cases than not, you will have a random suffix modifier on this item, which you can't really dictate. So the craft that we have in the one I'm wearing has a very good tier 1 lightning rest, and the one we crafted earlier only has a flat region tier 8 with HP per second. Very bad, but you can't really control the outcome of that. So in most cases, we'll end up with a scrap type of suffix. I'm just going to add a random modifier in here just for the sake of showing you. So let's do this one. In very, very few cases, you fill up the entire item. This can happen, extremely rare, and you can't really do much more than just pray, or you can use an annulment orb if you want to risk it, or you can just sell or use, up to you. However, in more cases than not, you'll have an open suffix or more than one open prefix modifier. So I'm going to show you a couple of different routes that you can do with this type of craft to achieve the desired result. Before we try to play with the prefixes, we need to have the suffixes filled for a variety of reasons. So if we're in a situation where we don't have an open suffix, but we have open prefixes or not, you have a couple of options. The first option would obviously be to use a beastcraft to move a random prefix and add a suffix. This will allow us to be in a position that, for example, say you have some mana and you want to make sure the suffixes are filled for the next following steps. You would then potentially use a prefix removal and add a suffix beastcraft, which will remove the prefix and then fill the suffix. Very good to use this if you have an open suffix and all of the prefixes are filled, because you will get a random suffix modifier, but still have an open prefix in this specific scenario. Another option that could happen is that you have, for example, say that you are sitting with 2 open prefixes and or 3 prefixes and an open suffix. By doing this, you open up that prefix modifier, which we need by doing this exact same approach. In this case, we got a fast start VS recharge. So let's just do that. And in this case, we are now presenting ourselves with a base item that has the suffixes with intelligence. You know, not the best, but it's okay. And how do we then proceed to fix the prefixes? Now, what's really interesting when it comes to the prefix approach is that we're going to be utilizing the tag system quite a lot when it comes to this. So going back to the Craft of Exile approach by looking at a Vol Regalia, which now has both the Hunter as well as a Crusader influence, I can verify that these are the modifiers that can roll on it, and we want to have the Curse additional application modifier. This has a caster tag, and as you can see, no other prefix modifier has a caster tag. 2 ways to sort this. We will be using a Harvest Reforged caster. This will guarantee that the caster tag will happen, but we don't want to lose our suffix modifiers. So we need to create a metacraft, which is called Suffix Cannot Be Changed. This craft costs 2 divine orbs. There is another way of doing this, which I'll tackle real quick in this video, and that is a beast called Wild Bristle Matron. This specific beast does this. Add a crafted meta modifier to a non-unique item. And no, you cannot add this if you already have a bench craft unless you have multi-craft benched on the item. So this means a metacraft will happen. The only metacraft prefix modifier is the suffix cannot be changed. There are quite a few different metacrafts when it comes to suffixes, but in this case, in this exact opportunity that has been presented to us, we can use the Wild Bristle Matron metacraft through the beast instead of spending 2 divines. Now, right now, the time of the recording, this beast costs 0.4 divines instead of 2 divines. You save a lot of currency by doing this. So this will then add a Metacraft, which I'll be adding manually in here. Suffix can't be changed. Keep in mind that you can use Craft of Exile's emulator to practice crafting instead of wasting currency in game. So you can actually try out these different crafts and learn by doing this. So you don't have to risk currency in game to try to figure out how things work. So now that this is sorted, and we can verify that if we did a reforged caster, we will guarantee the curse. This works like a Chaos Orb with one guaranteed modifier tag, which in this case will be the curse. We will then have a risk of actually adding 1 or 2 additional modifiers of our prefix modifiers on top of this curse. Depending on what the outcome is of this, this will present us with different opportunities. So first off, we'll do a reforged caster, guaranteeing us with an additional curse. And what just happened is actually the worst situation that could happen. That is that the item has now filled all of the prefix modifiers. In this case, we actually did get a mana and a life craft. The life is not bad, so it's fine. This would then be the final product, and you would either sell or use this item yourself. In more cases than not, you will end up with at least 1 open prefix. So I'm going to undo this and do it again to see if we end up with situations where we actually have other opportunities to work with it. Because with this happens, you can't do much more. It's done. You just don't bother risking the item at this point. So I'm going to do it again. And in this case, I ended up with 2 open prefix modifiers. With 2 open prefix modifiers, you have a couple of options. One would be to bench block a modifier that you don't want and then exalt slam it, and then use the benchcraft to remove that and add another benchcraft that you would want instead, which is the best outcome that you can do. So how do you then determine which benchcraft to block? And it's very simple information here. The way the item would work is that it already has the caster additional curse right now, which means that the total weight of pools would be the 2,625 plus the 61,000 plus the 2.5k, which presents us with this number. I'm going to show you this, and I will have guides tackling how this actually works more in depth later. But for those of you who understands it, I'll show you this in this video. So that is the total weight of the pool of modifiers that can roll. But we have additional curse already, so we can take away that, which is 250. So the modifiers that you would want would be a higher tier life roll, higher tier percent energy shield, higher tier percent of flat energy shield, or a percent HP. Those are 4 modifiers that we'd actually be okay with seeing on the item, and most of the other things are kind of whatever. So in this case, we will look at the, say, top 3 tiers of this, and as I can see here, percent energy shield is 1,000 each, the life is 1,000 each, flat energy shield is 1,000 each, and it doesn't matter which tier the percent, that's 1,000. So saying I take the top 3 tiers of everything, then I would basically take the these modifiers, which would be this one, say 3,000, because the top 3, the flat energy shield, another 3,000, that's 6,000, and the HP here would be another 3,000, that's 9,000, plus another 1,000 from the life percent, which would be 10,000. So those are the modifiers that we would want, and knowing that, we also have to look at the modifiers we don't want and block this. We don't want the mana craft, and we can see in the weight here that that has the highest weighted value. So if I put a low tier bench block in here, like the cheapest one you can do, that will prevent any sort of mana rolls, which is a 12,000 pool of weighted mods from this pool of mods that can roll. So by removing 12,000 from this and knowing that the mods that we would preferably have is valued at 10,000, you could take then 10,000 and divide this by the remaining pool of modifiers and see that I will have an 18.56% chance of actually hitting something that I really want. This doesn't guarantee something that we want, but it does at least give us a higher probability of hitting something that we desire. That's why bench blocking before slamming is very important. So I know that's a little bit in depth when it comes to the information about that. I hope you guys were following what I was doing. I'll obviously have proper guides talking about these in depth to help you guys understand that process. So we're going to show you how that works. In this case, I will then go down to the crafted section on prefixes, and I will bench craft the cheapest mana craft like this. Now I will then use an exalted orb, and I will have, like I mentioned, 18.5% chance of hitting a mod that I want. But whatever I get, we'll have to tackle and live with. In this case, we ended up with a tier 1 HP, which is very, very good. And after this, I will then be able to benchcraft something that I want. In this case, I would benchcraft Energy Shield, and the item is then done. Do it again, and in this case, I ended up with a tier 2 Energy Shield. Give me something bad. Okay, here we go. So in this case, I ended up with a bad opportunity. In this case, it is a Hunter Influence, physical damage taken as chaos. Not very good. But, you know, if it happens, you just say, fuck it, I've done everything I could to increase my chance of hitting what I wanted, and I'll just bench craft an HP craft on this, and there the item is done. That's it. It's very simple to craft this item. It doesn't have to be very expensive. You don't have to do the elevated versions of it, but this is how it's done. For the Dark Pact build specifically, the Power Charge and Crit allows you to remove the Power Charge and Crit or Storm setup, which is a very nice quality of life. But most importantly, the base spell critical strike chance in this is extremely good to use for the Dark Pact build. And the additional curse allows you to have the Despair as well as an Assassin's Mark, for example. And I hope you guys had some use of this video. If you did, let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe, keep rocking.